Hello viewer, welcome to Elimu TV where you watch and learn. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic in oral literature, but before that, my name is Salingware. Catch us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at elimutv_ke. Our Facebook page is Elimu TV and our SMS number is 40007. My name is Salingware. Welcome. Now, today I said we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. We are going to talk about oral literature and we are going to talk about myths. Now, maybe we should start by stating our objectives for the day, and by the end of this lesson, learner, you should be able to define myths, you should be able to state the characteristics of myths, and you should be able to narrate a myth from any community in Kenya or in Africa. Okay. Let's start by defining a myth. I know you've all heard about maybe different definitions of the word myth, and I want us to define myth as a genre of oral narratives which embodies a belief regarding some fact or a natural phenomenon usually caused by forces of nature in collaboration with a supernatural being. Now, I want you to listen to the following story. It's from the Agikuyu community, and it explains some facts. The first fact, of course, is death. It has a supernatural power, and that is God. Now, I want us to look at how these powers collaborated and brought about death on the land of Agikuyu. Now, a story is told about an all-powerful God who created everything on land and in the sea. He had done a very important message to his creation, that they shall never die. And since there were no phones where he could have just posted his important message on Facebook, Twitter, or WhatsApp, he looked for someone to send. So he summoned the chameleon. He told him to go to earth and tell his people that they shall never die. Told him to go to earth and tell his people that they shall never die. The chameleon set off with the good news. Unfortunately, a bird eavesdropped to their conversation. I didn't know birds were ill-mannered, but this bird eavesdropped to their conversation, but he got the wrong information, the information that people shall die. The bird, with all the agility and the swiftness, set off to the earth with the wrong information, that people shall die. On the way, he overtook the slow chameleon and reached the earth first. There he delivered the irreversible message. Hear this, thee all, from this day you shall die. Your Creator sent me. Now, after a long time, the third chameleon arrived with God's message that people shall never die, but live eternally. But remember, the bird had already gotten to the people and delivered the wrong message, which was irreversible. Now, from that day, death came upon the land, and that's the cause of death among the Agikuyu people. Now, let's look at features of these stories called myths. The first feature of that story is that it lacks an opening and the closing formula. Now, what is the opening and the closing formulas? Now, from other stories that you have studied, maybe in Form 1, you of course have come across stories that begin with a statement long time ago, or a very long time ago before maybe you were born or something of the sort. That is what we call an opening formula. What about a closing formula? Now, at the end of those or such stories, the narrator says, and from that day they lived happily ever after. Now, that's an example of a closing formula. But when we look at the story that we have just had, it lacks the opening and the closing formula. Now, that's the first feature of a myth. The second feature of a myth is that they have a supernatural character. or being. In the story that was read just now, we have realized that there was a God who was super powerful, who created everything on land and in the sea, and who had a very important message for his creation to tell them that they shall never die. Now, being the God, he had the power to kill or to give eternal life, making him a supernatural character or a superpower in that story. Let's look at the third character of myths. They explain a certain natural phenomenon. In the story that we've just heard, there is a natural phenomenon, which is death. No one can tell what it really is. No one can tell what happens. It's a natural phenomenon, and the story that we've heard seeks to explain what happened or what brought about death to God's creation. Let's look at the last feature of myths. And the last feature is that they are viewed as religious tales. And why? Now, remember the second feature states that they have a supernatural character. Now, in most of myths, in most of these stories known as myths, the supernatural character is the god or the goddess of that land. That being a god or a goddess, then they are viewed as religious tale because, of course, God brings about religion. So they are viewed as religious tales. Now, we stated our objectives at the beginning of this lesson, and I want you, from the story that was read to you, identify 3 features that make the story that was read to you a myth. Remember, I also told you to maybe find one myth from any society in Africa or any society in Kenya. Make sure you get one, and from that story again, you can maybe find 3 features that make that story a myth. Now, that was our lesson for today. I'll see you next time. Have a good time.